Ah, yes. What it would be like to be able to go back in time. How about let's go back in time about 3 hours ago, 3.5 hours ago, before what we just saw, which is one of the most confusing, I'll say shocking, but if I say that, then there'll be a bunch of annoying people that come on here and say, you were wrong all along. We knew this was going to happen. They weren't ever going to go undefeated, yada, yada, yada. This is one of the most shocking results I've seen in the history of this Kirk Ferentz-led program. I'm joined by none other than the guy who makes this all worth it and the guy who helps calm our every fear, and that's Coach Don Patterson. Late on a Saturday night following, again, what I am calling one of the most confusing and I think devastating losses, in at least recent history under Kirk Ferentz. Coach, welcome. You look good. In spite of what we just saw, I know these last 3.5 hours were not easy for Hawkeye fans to watch. So much to unpack, not enough time to do it. It's late. We're going to be here a while. You start, Don. You're usually better with words in these circumstances because I really don't know where to start. What on earth? What on earth?
Well, as you are aware, their last two games have been against Oregon and Ohio State. And as I understand it from watching the game tonight, they did a lot of good things in those two games too, but they simply made more mistakes than they made tonight. Played better tonight than they played in recent weeks at our expense. One of my fears going in, Corey, was that we would give them encouragement by the way the game was going. And you've heard me say before, if you're a favorite, you need to remove any hope that the other team has as quickly as you can. And we obviously never got that done tonight.
I want to make something very clear before we go on. Let's just make this very clear. And you're right. I watched the Michigan State-Ohio State game, and I commented on it after the game. And they did do some good things in that game. I thought Ohio State played horrendously. And that's part of the reason I went into this game. I'll admit, I was just wrong. I was just wrong. I was as confident going into this game as I've been for any Big Ten game for as long as I've been doing this show. And that is the truth. So I was just frankly wrong. But Michigan State, I didn't think looked very good against Ohio State or Oregon. They failed to eclipse 250 yards of total offense in either one of those games, Don. They put up 468 on Iowa today. Explain how that's possible.
Well, I know one thing. We had more missed tackles in this game than any single game that I can remember, really. And one reason we got into those situations, they got us isolated a lot in the open field. And we had some young defensive backs that were out there playing. And we did not do a good job of making tackles in the open field. We missed too many to count. I give the receivers credit. That, what's his name?
Marsh.
Marsh, yeah. He's a freshman. He ended up unofficially with eight targets, 8 catches for 113 yards. A lot of yardage after contact, too. TJ Hall struggled at corner. Nestor struggled at that same corner position. Missed more than 1 or 2 key tackles. Lever missed tackles when he was in. Maybe we missed Castro more than I thought we would. I don't know how much of our problem related to the guys playing in Castro's place. And Trigger got injured, come to think of it. Did he ever come back? I'm not sure that he did. They reported maybe early fourth quarter that he had been injured and was questionable to return. I don't know that he did return. But our guys got exposed in the open field. A lot of missed tackles. and we
Cohen
didn't help.
Intringer did not return in this game. Go ahead, Don.
Yeah. Well, other things that come to mind, it took us too long in any number of cases in the first half. We weren't running the ball well. Well, that's because they were loading the box. Not always,
Right.
but enough to cause us problems. Tried to run the ball against a heavy box. That didn't work well. There were times when they didn't have a heavy box and they had decent movement in their defensive front, and they did get some penetration against us into our backfield any number of times. We were behind the chains a lot, and unlike recent games, we actually converted fairly well on 3rd and long, but not tonight. We didn't. Cade was part of the problem too. He didn't throw the ball with the necessary accuracy.
But big part of the problem, Don. Big part of the problem. That first half was as bad as I've seen, and Cade made a couple of good throws in the third quarter, but I think it's a rotten disgrace, and I know this sounds like a broken record. I think it's a rotten disgrace that you trot him back out there in the second half. That's my opinion. I just think it's a rotten disgrace. And it has nothing to do with being a guy, Don. I'm not a guy who's always called for the next guy in. But
Right.
And people wanted to see Peyton Manziel or Tyler Wiegers or whoever was his backup. That has nothing to do. That is not my style in calling out whoever the next guy is, wanting him to play in place of the starter. But they've got a proven guy in Brendan Sullivan. And they just I thought they missed an opportunity at halftime to make a change. Let's go to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line because we got a lot of people piling up here. We've got Alex in here first. Alex, welcome.
Good evening, gentlemen. I would ask how you guys are, but I think I know the answer to that question. So, I think, Corey, you summed it up best. This was just confusing. I was fairly confident going into this game, knowing that Michigan State may not be a terrible team, but they're not the best team. And I thought Iowa had a really good shot of, kind of doing what they did against Washington. One of the worst tackling performances I've seen by this team in a long time. That was something that I was shaking my house, yelling and screaming about the poor tackling. And then the one thing that I noticed, now I didn't pay attention too much in the first half. I started paying attention a little more in the second half. Was Michigan State had 2 weeks to prepare for this, which means they saw Caleb Johnson as our number one threat. So they said, okay, we really need to isolate him, work on that defensive line on our linebackers to make sure he does not get to that second level. Obviously, we saw what happened one play. Well, Iowa decided okay, we're going to run inside zone up the gut. We're going to try to run Caleb Johnson, bash our heads against the effing brick wall until we break through. Instead of having some type of play action where you're on 1st and 10, you fake it to Johnson, you roll Cade out, and then you show okay, they're not always going to go to Caleb. We did that in the second half. I noticed on the second touchdown, we did a play action. And I believe it was Luke Lachey was wide open for about 20 yards. It's oh my gosh, look what happens when you have a guy like Caleb Johnson in your backfield. You fake it to him, he's wide open. Cade played horrible first half. He had, and this is where maybe we can talk about laces, where he had even the Seth Anderson on that last drive. He had him wide open. Missed him. He missed, I don't know how many wide receivers in this game. And that one interception, I don't know if there was miscommunication going on or anything like that. Time of possession, Michigan State had it 39 to whatever the reverse of that is, almost 65%. Michigan State did not punt this entire game. On the 2-point conversion, you posted on your Twitter, it's our playbook's broken. Well, we didn't have Sullivan in there. Why are we not having Sullivan run the 2-point conversion? It was just incredibly frustrating for me to watch, and it just seems like the same old, this is what Iowa does. We're going to do this. We're not going to change anything because we're Iowa, as opposed to, okay, Michigan State knows what we're going to do. They had 2 weeks to prepare. Let's throw something else at them. And we didn't see that until the second half. And the last thing maybe I can ask is Deshaun Lee, was he hurt? Because I don't think we saw him once in this game. Obviously we knew Castro was hurt, and then Entringer got hurt third quarter. But was he that hurt, or is he that bad? Because we saw T.J. Hall in the beginning of the season get cooked a bunch of times in the first 3 games. They put Deshaun Lee in there. He held his own. And if you're going to say, well, he gave up a touchdown to Jeremiah Smith, Ohio State, that was a hell of a play by him. And then he gave up a back shoulder throw to Washington on a touchdown. It's like, okay, two plays that are the quarterback and the wide receiver. That was just a great throw by the quarterback, and it's hard to defend that. And if you're going to bench him for that, I scratch my head of like, I don't know. I'm kind of beside myself on this because I was fairly confident going into this. And I'm like, what is Iowa playing for? I think if we won out and got a little bit of help, Iowa had an outside chance of making the playoffs. Now, we play for wins. We can go to a bowl. It kind of helps with recruiting and everything. But as Iowa fans, as me, I was thinking, okay, Iowa still has – this is a great season due to our schedule, has a great shot to make it to the playoffs. We're dead now in the sense of that. So I'm not going to label this season as a failure. I label it as a disappointment because of just what
Alex.
If we go 6-6, it's a failure. But it's this huge disappointment right now. This team had a whole lot.
It's a failure at 9-3. I'm sorry.
No, I'm maybe not to that level yet. If we lose any other game, I could probably get there with you, but I don't know. I said a lot. Thank you guys for letting me rant. Obviously, I think there's a lot of people on here going to be ranting and raving on this, and then the first half, the last thing I have written down was out of 5 drives, we went 4 3-and-outs. It can't happen in a Big Ten game like that. So
that was one of my frustrations in the first half. Realizing the way our offense has played this year, isn't it logical to expect that they're going to load up and commit to defending the run? And my point is, you've heard me say it before, you have to scare them out of doing that with man beaters. You've heard me talk about it a number of times. It's true. You have to have ways to beat them over the head with the fact that they're overcommitting to the run. And we didn't do that for the longest time. Obviously, in the second half, in the third quarter, we did some of that. That helped.
And it worked. And
my point is, you anticipate it going into the game, and you start the game running man beaters.
I mean, we saw Vanderzee, get open a few times. We saw, Lachey have a couple double catches. I know at the very end he stepped out, but he still made it kind of a heck of a nice catch. And he was pretty much absent from the game. Howard made a nice play, in that last series, I believe, to get that first down. But it's just we didn't start with that. This is where I think the huge knock on Kirk is, where he's like, we're Iowa, we're gonna do what Iowa does. We're gonna try to 3 yards in a cloud of dust, and this is where we have to change a little bit of the philosophy. Now, unfortunately, what this game does, it shows teams like Northwestern, Wisconsin, Maryland, and Nebraska, it's like, hey, here's how to beat Iowa. Michigan State just did it, and Aiden Childs, he's, I've heard that he's one of those hot and cold players where, man, look at tonight, he was the hot hand, but man, you look at some of the other games, he is very turnover prone, and we saw Iowa get an interception. Granted, we didn't make it into any points, but the fact, and also there was a couple times when, man, that guy had a lot of time to throw, and I don't know if it's just me, but I feel like one game a season where Phil Parker gets completely outcoached. And it felt like, obviously, this is the one game. We gave up 468 yards of offense. So that's it. That's really all I have to say. unless you guys have something more.
Let's not forget, too, one of those child's passes went directly to Schulte and right through his breadbasket
Yeah.
into the ground. Should have been a routine play.
Yeah, I had a weird feeling when he dropped that interception. Like, it just feels like this is going to be a weird game. But, well, it looks like it's just the Don and Alex show. Looks like Corey's gone. So, I don't know. So, Coach, so maybe I can ask you while Carter tries to get reconnected. Like, as a coach, and you're kind of playing for a playoff. Now those hopes are essentially gone. How do you get your team motivated to play the rest of the games and compete? Like, what message do you give to the players at this point?
Well, a man should be judged by how he responds to adversity. We've got more adversity now than we had a week ago. And if you're any measure of a man, then you'll respond the right way. You'll pick yourself up, dust yourself off, get back to work, and be more determined than ever to play up to your full abilities.
Do you think the absence of Castro really affected this game as much as it did, or do you think that just Michigan State had a better game plan going in?
Well, it did seem, I said a week ago, they have 2 weeks to develop their game plan for us. We only have 1 week to get ready for them. It appeared that the week off did help them.
Yeah.
Maybe the first week they probably went back to a lot of fundamental work, but on their own time, the coaches are still game planning for Iowa. Whether they introduce those plays in their extra week or not, I don't know, but they clearly had a good game plan for us, and they put individual defenders on an island, and we got exposed because we couldn't get the guys on the ground too many times to count.
Yeah.
Alex, I got to let you slide. But thank you for calling in as always, sir.
Me and Don had fun in your absence, so.
Yeah.
All right.
Obviously, having some issues with having some internet issues, kind of like Iowa's offense and defense tonight. So fitting.
Anyways, win, lose, or draw, go Hawks.